afraid, no, I will never be ashamed. You are with me. You are with me. And I've seen enough to know that you're my only hope. I don't want to know if you're not with me. I've seen enough to know that you're my only hope. I don't want to go if you're not with me. Yeah. Lord, if you're not with me. Oh, I open my mouth and you speak for me. You move the mountains and roll back the sea. I've seen enough to know you're my only hope. I don't want to go. Yeah. And I've seen enough to know you're my only hope. I don't want to go if you're not with me. I've seen enough to know you're my only hope. I don't want to go. You're not with me. Yeah, Lord. If you're not with me, oh, yeah. You're not with me. This might hurt, it's not safe, but I know that I gotta make a change. I don't care if I break, at least I'll be feeling something. Just okay's not enough. Help me fight through the nothingness of life. I don't wanna go through the motions. I don't wanna go one more day without your all-consuming passion inside of me. I don't wanna spend my whole life asking, what if I had given everything instead of going through the motions? Not this time. I'm gonna let my heart defeat my mind. Let your love make me whole. I think I'm finally feeling something. Just okay's not enough. Help me fight through the nothingness of this life. I don't wanna go through the motions. I don't wanna go one more day without your all-consuming passion inside of me. I don't wanna spend my whole life asking, what if I had given everything instead of going through the motions? Lord, take me all the way. I don't wanna go through the motions, no. I know I'm feeling something real. I don't wanna go through the motions. I don't wanna go one more day without your all-consuming passion inside of me. I don't wanna spend my whole life asking, what if I had given everything instead of going through the motions? I don't wanna go through the motions. I don't wanna go one more day without your all-consuming passion. trusted you. Stepped out on the ocean. Caught my hand among the waves. 'Cause you're the God of all my days. Each step I take, you make a way. And I will give you all my praise. My seasons change, you stay the same. You're the God of all my days. Ran from you, wandered in the shadows, and found a God who relentlessly pursues. I hate you, haunted by my failure. I found a God whose grace still covers me. And I fell on you when I was at my weakest. I found the God, lifter of my head. And I've worshipped you and felt you right here beside me. You're the reason that I sing. You're the God of all my days. Each step I take, you make a way. And I will give you all my praise. My seasons change, you stay the same. You're the God of all my days. Oh, in my worry, God, you are my stillness. And in my searching, God, you are my answers. In my blindness, God, you are my vision. And in my bondage, God, you are my freedom. In my weakness, God, you are my power. You're the reason that I sing. You're the God of all my days. Each step I take, you make a way. And I will give you all my praise. My seasons change, may stay the same. You're the God of all my days. Yeah. My blindness, God, you are my vision. My bondage, God, you are my freedom. All my days.
Good morning, everybody. It is a beautiful day, isn't it? Once again, God's given us this wonderful day to be in His church. And Lord, I'm looking out at our congregation today. I see some are missing. Those who are ill, may your loving hand reach down and heal them and give them comfort. And if they're not ill, may their day be God-filled and God-sensed, and they take you first in their hearts. And Lord, at this time, I would like for you to intervene in our nation, because there's been a number of incidents where people truly need your comfort and guidance. And Lord, be with them in their time of prayer and the time of hurting and healing. And Lord, be with the pastor today as he gives this message, because it's truly important message. I prayed. I kind of snuck and looked a little bit. So I think it's going to be a really important sermon. Jesus, be with us throughout this week. May we keep you in our hearts always. Amen.
I want to take the time to talk about some American principles of justice that maybe will help us to take a look at some of the kingdom's principles. For you see, in our system of justice, we have either a judge or a jury who are to be the triers of fact. A judge is trained to know what evidence is admissible and not admissible, and to decide what the facts ought to be and then render a decision. In a jury's situation. The jury is to listen to the evidence based on what is allowed to enter in as evidence. They are warned not to discuss the case and not to decide the facts and the rectitude of either side until all the evidence is heard. We kind of naturally, we're always having to remind people of that because it oftentimes is our tendencies to jump to conclusions. So much so that trial lawyers are aware of this, especially plaintiffs and somewhat defense lawyers, because they know that if they make an excellent opening statement, and an opening statement includes no evidence at all, it's just what I'm going to prove to you, a lot of times the juries will jump to conclusions before having heard the evidence. I want you to think of that as we go through some of the kingdom principles that we're going to take a look at today. And in Matthew chapter 7, starting with verse 1, it's coming towards the conclusion of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. It is part of a whole sermon. It is not, so we're dissecting piece by piece, but you got to remember that it is in a whole context. And in that whole context, Jesus has given us other kingdom principles. One of the kingdom principles he's given us is that if you don't forgive, you're not going to be forgiven. We usually don't want to hear that. We want to hear about how God's merciful to us, but may he, wring the neck of the people that we don't like. And now Jesus is going to talk about another kingdom principle that a lot of people, including people who don't attend church and people who don't consider themselves disciples, as a matter of fact, don't even believe that there is a God, heard of this kingdom principle and, quite frankly, misapply it. And so I'm going to say something today that either you're going to violate this scripture, or you're going to say, let me consider it, or maybe he's right, let me think about it some more, or whatever. So now with that to pique your interest, it says this: do not judge so that you will not be judged. Straightforward. Don't judge so that you will not be judged. Now, let me tell you what this scripture isn't. It isn't a sword. What do I mean by a sword? Because you will hear a lot of people tell you, who are you to judge me? Which I find interesting, because by the mere fact of saying, who are you to judge me, they've judged that you've judged them. They've rendered a decision. Or they will say, you Christians are a bunch of hypocrites. Or you just need a crutch. Or you're simpletons that you just need something to hold on to explain life because it's just a typical. They make all of these decisions about who we are, and yet they will say, who are you to judge me? And because we hear that, we see this, we go, ooh, I shouldn't judge. The word judge does not mean in this instance discernment. If it meant discernment, then Jesus would have put us on a real difficult horn of dilemma. Because there are times that Jesus tells us, beware of false prophets. Well, how can you tell a false prophet is a false prophet unless you made a judgment that he's a false prophet? Later, we're going to talk about next time, Jesus is going to tell us, don't give things that are holy to dogs and pearls to swine. Which means you have to render a decision who are dogs and who are swine. He's not saying that we're not to be critical and check out what things are. We are to be as wise as serpents, but innocent as doves. Judging here is both a judgmental attitude and condemnation. I find you guilty. So when he says, do not judge, he's saying, do not find people guilty, for you will be found guilty. And then he follows it up with the kingdom principle, says this, for in the same way you judge, you will be judged. And by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you. That's why I'm telling you, it is not a sword. It is not a way of saying, well, who are you to judge me? It is a warning to me to make sure I don't judge condemning people and have a judgmental attitude. Because by my judgmental attitude, I will then be judged by a judgmental attitude. When I find no mercy, I will receive no mercy. When I expect high standards of justice, then I will be given high standards of justice. By the same measure, that is how it's going to be you. So my advice to you, if you're a grandparent, you'll understand this analogy. If you're not, it's the best one I got. When my first grandchild was born, we would go out to dinner, and everybody in the family would just look at him. It's kind of like, what did we do before he was born? Because we were all just enwrapped in the attention of him. And if other babies cried in the restaurant, I would get irritated. Just shut that brat up. Can't you see that I am trying to enjoy my dinner with my family? But if my grandchild cried, or maybe he needed his diaper changed, or maybe he's hungry, or maybe he just needs to be held more. You see, I was always finding reasons why he was acting the way he was, but I gave nobody else the same latitude. So my advice to you is to judge people like your grandchildren. There must be a reason. Now, I want us to take a look at judgment because it is something very important. So I want you to turn to Romans chapter 2. And it says this, therefore you have no excuse, every one of you who passes judgment. For in that which you judge another, you condemn yourselves. For you who judge practice the same things. And we know that the judgment of God rightly falls upon those who practice such things. But do you suppose that this, O man, when you pass judgment on those who practice such things, and do the same thing yourself, that you will escape the judgment of God? A lot of times when we're passing condemnation, judgment, we are guilty of the same thing. And as a matter of fact, oftentimes people who will judge us for certain things will project upon us their actions. So when we are considering these matters, we need to understand, there, but for the grace of God go I. And in my condemnation of the other, am I practicing the same thing? Oftentimes, the harshest critics are the people who practice the same things. And God is saying, you will not escape judgment when you do the things that you are condemning others for. And let's face it, we're all sinners. No one does good. No one is righteous. Paul in Romans goes on to discuss it and says this in Romans chapter 14, starting with verse 10. But you, why do you judge your brother? Or again, why do you regard your brother with contempt? You see, here's that judgmental attitude. It isn't, oh, my brother is weak and has a problem. It's, no, I view my brother with contempt. How dare he or she do those things? Why do you view your brother with contempt? For we will all stand before the judgment seat of God. For it is written, as I live, says the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall give praise to God. So then each one of us will give an account of himself to God. That's scary. Because I know what I've done. And most of it you don't know because I'm still standing here. I will give an account to God. And you will give an account to God. So when it says, by the same measure you will be judged, it's in your best interest to go there saying, I was nothing but merciful. So when I give account, yeah, you're right, God, I blew it. Yeah, you're right, God, I blew it. Yeah, you're right, God, I blew it. But I'm looking for your mercy, not your justice, because I gave mercy and not justice. But I have to render an account to God. That's why when Jesus gives the advice that we saw several weeks ago about when someone's taking you to court to make friends with them before you get there, do that with God. Because in a human court, you may end up having to spend a lot of money or go to jail. And God has the power to throw a person into hell. It's serious. And in case you thought Paul just kind of messed up at that one time, 2 Corinthians tells us the same thing in chapter 5, verse 10. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may be recompensed, that means paid for his deeds in the body, according to what he has done, whether good or bad. Yes, we will go to heaven based on the sacrifice of Jesus. And yes, we are righteous because of his sacrifice. But there is an accounting that is mandated. I gave you the gift of teaching. What did you do with it? I gave you the gift of music. What did you do with it? I gave you the gift of love. What did you do with it? I gave you the gift of being able to make money. What did you do with it? We will be rendering an accounting whether we've done it well or poorly. First Corinthians. Paul talks about being judged and others judging. And starting with verse 3 in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, which is a little ahead of where I put, it says, but to me it is a very small thing that I may be examined by you, or by any human court. In fact, I do not even examine myself. For I am conscious of nothing against myself, yet I am not by this acquitted. Because sometimes we can deceive ourselves. But the one who examines me is the Lord. And that's the principle that we need to understand about condemning. It is God's place to judge God's people, not us. God called you. God gifted you. God holds you to account, and not me, and not your brother or sister. Therefore, do not go on passing judgment before the time, but wait until the Lord comes, who will both bring to light the things hidden in the darkness and disclose the motives of men's hearts. And then each man's praise will come to him from God. This is telling us that there will come a time when we will judge. And in chapter 6 of 1 Corinthians, it also says this in verse 2 and 3. Or do you not know that the saints will judge the world? If the world is judged by you, are you not competent to constitute the smallest law courts? Do you not know that we will judge angels? How much more matters of this life? These two verses tells us two things. It's not time to render judgment now. It's like I shared as an example of American justice. It is the job of the judge or the jury to listen to all the evidence. During this lifetime, all the evidence has not been presented, and so therefore it is too early for us to render judgment. This principle you can see as far back as Genesis, when God, talking to Abram, promises him the land. But God says this, but the iniquity of the people who are living in the land has not yet been completed. God says it's not time to render judgment, but there will be a time. And for those who study the Old Testament, and especially the prophets, and when God renders judgment against nations, he does so, and he usually almost always follows it up with, so that they may know that I am the Lord God. He renders judgment for a purpose. So, we are going to be judges. We are going to judge the world, and we're going to judge angels. Just not now. When he comes, when all the facts will be revealed, all the intentions in the heart will be revealed. When all the evidence is done, then we will render judgment. Until then, be discerning, but not condemning. So parents, I'll tell you a story. There was this little kid who lived across the street and wanted to play with my brother. And my mom had two rules before that kid goes. It was, if you're playing and the kid shows up, go home. And if you go there and the kid's there, you go home. And other parents would say to my mom, but I feel sorry for the little kid. And my mother says, I feel sorry for him too. But I'm not going to let him ruin my child. So we need to be discerning, but not necessarily condemning. There is a difference. We need to know those who practice evil and those who don't. We need to be discerning. And if you're told, who are you to judge me? I'm a sinner saved by grace. I don't judge you now, but there may come a time. But now's not the time, and now's not the place. Because so often, when people say, who are you to judge me? It's because they want to do what they're doing. It's fine. But I can disapprove of what you're doing without condemning you. See, love the sinner but hate the sin. Some statements kind of still true. So wait until the proper time. And Paul's argument here is, the problem is in this verse, is that brother was taking brother to court. And Paul's going, wait a minute, why are you going to court? If you're going to one day judge the world and judge angels, can't you handle smaller matters? Like whether brother A owes brother B $5 or not? He's not saying stay out of the deciding business. Stay out of judgmentalness. So, remember the principle of the kingdom. Don't condemn. The measurement that you use in deciding things should always be with mercy and love. Because that's what we want in return. Jesus is going to continue his sermon and give another analogy. And I think this is a great one because we all believe and understand that Jesus was the son of a carpenter. So he probably made tables and chairs and did whatever other carpenters did. And then he says in this, why are we judging and don't judge? He says in verse 3, why do you look at the speck that is in your brother's eye? Or in essence, the little piece of sawdust that gets in people's eyes. Why do you look at that little sawdust speck in your brother's eye, but you do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Now, this is hyperbole, but it's a great analogy. You can picture it, this big 2x4 sticking out of this guy's eye, trying to get the little sawdust out of another person's eye. Jesus says, why are you doing that? And all too often in our being critical of other people, we never see our own faults. And all too often, the fault of our brothers is sawdust compared to the beam that is in our eye. But notice what Jesus says. Or how can you say to your brother, let me take out the speck out of your eye, and behold, the log is in your own eye? You hypocrite. You play actor. You phony. Now you would think he would stop there and say, so don't do that. But notice what he says. First, take the log out of your own eye. So step one, get rid of your problems. Get rid of those things that affect your sight. Those things that determine what's right and what's first. So that you may be able to see. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will be able to see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Notice Jesus doesn't say, well, you got a log, he's got a speck, we all got problems. He says, take action first, not with your brother. Fix yourself first. Then help your brother. But usually when we hear who are you to judge me? Well, then we do nothing. I need to be the person who sees clearly. after seeing clearly that I can help you. But notice, it's my brother. We're all too quick to try to fix the world. First, let us fix us, and let us fix each other. Then we'll let God fix the world. Because only He can do it anyway. I wish this were complicated, so I could preach for a whole lot longer. But it ain't. It's very simple. Don't be judgmental and don't condemn. When you're taking a look and discerning things, do so with a heart of compassion and mercy. That your judging your brother takes the place of God. And God doesn't like to have His place taken from. God is God and you're not. God called each of us, and we are responsible to Him. You're not responsible to me. You're not responsible to the person you're sitting next to. You're not responsible to the people in the back or in the front. You're responsible to God, and you will give an account. And as such, we should stop thinking you're accountable. But in case you think that's an easy standard, I give a break to my grandkids. God gives a break to you because you're His children. You're not my children, you're His children. And we should let God be God and do God things. And wait until all the evidence is presented. And then when God says, now's the time to judge, we judge. But until then, don't let people think that you're not allowed to come to any conclusions when it comes to right or wrong actions. Because Jesus Himself calls for us to make discerning decisions about people we come in contact with. The difference is, just as Jesus says, who is here to condemn you? No one, neither do I. I don't exist to approve or condemn. I'm simply a fellow servant. And as such, we're in this together. We're in it to help each other. But first, see clearly, then take action. We're going to sing as our invitation song, our song of reflection, Hosanna. And in it, it talks about that may I love the way you love me. May I have a heart that breaks for what breaks your heart. May we so identify with God that giving love and mercy is not an act of thought, but an act of who we are. My job is not to be critical of you. My job is to love you. And all God's people said. Stand with me as we pray.